While Ethiopia is now accusing Eritrea of planning a war against it. In a letter that was written to the United Nations Secretary General, Ethiopia alludes that Eritrea is colluding with the Tigray People Liberation Front to wage a war against it because of its sentiments about access to the sea. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you about these new developments by Ethiopia, as well as the statements that the president of Ethiopia uttered that angered Eritrea. Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification button so that when I release something new on Ethiopia and Eritrea, you get notified as soon as possible. While Ethiopia and Eritrea have had periods of tension and peace, and now those relations are turning sour yet again, as Ethiopia has now accused Eritrea of preparing to wage a war against it in collusion with an opposition grouping in the latest sign of escalating tensions between the two neighbors over the control of the Red Sea. Well, the accusations by Ethiopia are contained in a letter that was written by the Foreign Minister of Ethiopia to the United Nations Secretary General, alluding that there has been a very close relationship between Eritrea and the Tigray People Liberation Front that makes Ethiopia uneasy. And mind you, this is coming at a time when there has been strained relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea lately, as Ethiopia has been having discussions about access to the sea. Just the other day, we were talking about Ethiopia having discussions with Somaliland so that it can have access to the sea. Of course, this particular ambition by Ethiopia was put to a halt by the Somalian government, saying that Somaliland is still part of Somalia, and that if Ethiopia is planning to have that access to the sea, then it has to pass through the right channels. And of course, Somalia say that it is not going to grant any single inch of its territory to Ethiopia for it to be part of the Ethiopian government unless they go through the right channels. And of course, that will be a partnership between Ethiopia and Somalia. So that particular route to have that strip of land of Somaliland by Ethiopia had a lot of complications. And now we are hearing about Ethiopia thinking different. Just the other day, the president of Ethiopia uttered words that have angered the government of Eritrea. Because on Monday, President Taye Atske-Selassie described the Red Sea and the River Nile as great water sources which are essential to the country's existence. And these words are also coming at a critical moment when the River Nile downstream has flooded and Egypt and Sudan have started to blame Ethiopia for the building of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that was just opened the other day by Abiy Ahmed. They are saying that the opening of this dam is what has caused the flooding of the River Nile downstream. River Nile is a critical and the most important source of the economy of Egypt. It is the lifeline of Egypt. If you look at the settlement in Egypt, most people have settled just along the banks of River Nile. Most cities are just along the banks of River Nile. And this is why the Egyptian government has been really at odds with the Ethiopian government for building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Now, the words of President Taye have also angered Eritrea by saying that the Red Sea is also very essential to Ethiopia. Because when he mentions the Red Sea, this also touches on Eritrea. It is Eritrea that previously was one with Ethiopia and gave Ethiopia access to the Red Sea. Now, the sentiments of the president led to a sharp rebuke from Eritrea's information minister Yemane Gebremeskel, who said that the rhetoric was too crass and pathetic to tell. He also added that it was bizarre and mind-boggling by all standards. That is the response coming from the information minister of Eritrea, saying that the words of the president of Ethiopia, who now alludes that the access to the sea, and specifically the Red Sea, is essential to Ethiopia, meaning that Ethiopia still has that ambition to have that access to the Red Sea through Eritrea. And he said that those words are bizarre and should not be uttered by a person with the status of a president of Ethiopia. Well, if these allegations are true, then it only means that Eritrea is planning a proxy war against Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed government so that it can prevent it from launching a military incursion into Eritrea to seize its ports along the Red Sea. Now, Ethiopia and Eritrea fought for the control of a border town called Badme from 1998 to 2000. And since then, the relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea had been sour. Now, it is during Abiy Ahmed administration, the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia, that we saw a thaw of relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea. In fact, Abiy Ahmed won a Nobel Peace Prize for mending the relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea. However, the relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea right now have soured with the continued discussion about access to the sea, and of course not going through the right channels with Eritrea for Ethiopia to have that access to the sea. Well, I will continue to keep you informed of the latest of what will come out from Ethiopia after Ethiopia has now formally sent that letter to the United Nations Secretary General alluding that Eritrea is planning with the Tigray People Liberation Front to attack Ethiopia, and that the relationship between Eritrea and the TPLF is causing jitters in Ethiopia. Keep it bona fide.